This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fanslow, and I hate warriors. Too narrow-minded. I'll tell you what I do like, though. A killer. Dyed-in-the-wool killer. Cold-blooded, clean, methodical, and thorough. Now, a real killer, when he picked up the ZF-1, would have immediately asked about the little red button on the bottom of the gun. Bring me the priest. That and more after we hear a word from our sponsor, Napa Autotech Training. Check out our Napa Autotech Facebook page to find out the latest Napa Autotech virtual class scheduled at a time that is convenient for you. Learn from the comfort of your home. So, sometimes when I do these types of podcasts, it's usually like in memorial or in memory of. Luckily, nothing could be further from the truth with Jorge Menchu. I guess I'll start with this. At work, we've recently hired like 3 new people in the last probably 3 months. Little scary that we might be pushing it. But 2 of those are entry level. Apprentice, if you will, novice, if you will, very green, looking to work their way up through the ranks. And so they will be, stranded on the lube rack because that's what you do. And then we have another person we brought in who hopefully will be a good steering, suspension, alignment, light to medium duty repairs. And honestly, it sounds like he's very interested in doing heavy repairs. So we'll see how that all plays out. I just hope it really does play out because now we have a lot of warm bodies running around. And I proved that with a thermal imager. But we do have a lot of people running around. The reason I bring this up is that I get asked a lot of questions. And I don't have anything against questions, but those of you that know me know that sometimes I can find some questions almost debilitating to try to answer. It's because my brain explodes with correlations and intricacies. And I don't mean intricacies like complexity, although it may be complexity, but really just so many things have to be talked about and understood before we can maybe even attempt to answer the question. And they might ask to tell them how AC works, air conditioning works, because the shop owner was going to show them how to recharge AC systems, which, I'm not here to beg on anybody. I'm really not. That's not the point. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I get it. It's like a commoditized type of a labor line service. The machine does most of the work, recovering the refrigerant, weighing it, seeing if it passes a really weak, if you will, leak test with the vacuum pump after evacuation, putting dye in if need be. A lot of times we don't need to add dye. I think that happens far too often. Everything gets dye in it. It probably doesn't need it. Probably already has it. Recharge it. Send the customer on their way with instructions to drive it for a couple days, a week, whatever. Bring it back. We'll look for the leak. That's a different conversation that I hopefully will have a guest on to talk about. But a lot of times that's what is done. And so I think just in general, out in the field. So they'll ask, and it's like, well, this question can't be answered in a sentence or two. This can't be answered in 5 minutes. We wouldn't be able to go to lunch and have me talk the whole time to explain it. And mind you, I feel like I had a pretty strong grasp of air conditioning until I joined the Facebook group, Automotive HVAC Technicians, and feel like maybe not everything I thought was right was wrong, but it totally humbled me, which I have no problems. I'm glad to be humbled, but it just kind of sucks to feel like you had a pretty good grasp of something, were taught something a certain way multiple times from different levels of training, if you will, from, college, tech college, to even professional level classes. So there I sit. I'm trying to think of how to answer this question, and they probably think I'm looking at them like they're, being ridiculous or they're stupid or something. In actuality, I'm trying to think of how I could possibly answer this question satisfactorily, and I can't. Maybe even a little bit of beating myself up in that I don't know how to answer this question. I don't think it's reasonable to answer the question because there's caveats, right? There's a lot of things we talk about that in certain circles, if you have a certain level of knowledge, you will hear somebody make an explanation and agree with them, even if you agree in premise, because of what you already know. Whereas if you had zero knowledge leading up to that, listening to that discussion or listening to somebody describe something, you might shake your head and go, oh my God, that's way over my head. Something I've talked about for training classes that sometimes we leave going like, oh man, that was way over my head. That's not necessarily a good thing, but it could be. It's not could be. It's usually whatever fundamental knowledge and understanding wasn't there already. It brings up an interesting video that I recommend everyone watch on whatever streaming service, or like a YouTube or whatnot. Look up Dr. Richard Feynman. I think it's either under magnetism or ice. Feynman, Feynman. He's passed on, but he was a brilliant physicist, mainly in quantum mechanics and leading into like quantum field theory, and wrote a book called QED, Quantum Electrodynamics, talking about the very, very small, right? The micro levels, sub-molecular, really subatomic level of things, and being able to derive a lot of what we interact with in the world from that, and just super smart. You may have heard about him or seen him in the Challenger documentary on Netflix when the Challenger blew up, that he was on the board or part of that investigation committee. Why they put him on there, I have no idea. I mean, if they really were after answers, makes perfect sense. But then they would have put other people on that committee. They chose him, and I think because they thought he was just a goofball. And he did a lot. We could get in a whole freaking episode on Feynman. He's just a very interesting character. Long story short, he's the one that presents them with the issue with the O-rings, that they were no longer really pliable when they got below a certain temperature, namely freezing. Really what led to that booster leaking and leading to the explosion that took 7 astronauts' lives. They leaned on him very heavy to not submit that report. They wanted him to bury it, but he wouldn't. So in this video, the interviewer is asking him about magnetism. What is it that you feel when you hold two magnets close to each other, when they either have a pretty strong attraction to one another, and then if you rotate the one, flip the other one, if you will, that's also very, very strong repulsion. Like they push each other away. Can be quite strong. He's asking Dr. Feynman to explain what is that you're feeling. And you can see him trying to work out how to answer this question. And so he gives what I think you would probably just knee-jerk react as a lame response, lame answer. But it's because he had to. The interviewer pursues, and I'm not trying to give away everything so that you don't watch this, but they pursue, they want more. It leads into a discussion, if you will, or a rant by Dr. Feynman about how our knowledge of things is what's needed to understand what we're talking about. And he makes a reference to like an aunt slipping on the ice, breaking her hip. And if we talk about that, she had to go to the hospital, whatever, we would all, for the most part, make some creative leaps, fairly accurate ones, because we're familiar. These are terminology we're all familiar with. These are a series of events we're aware of or have lived through. So it makes that explanation very, very easy. But now we bring in magnetism. And now this is a big deal because pretty much everything you've ever taught about magnetism is probably wrong. Is it that important for your day-to-day life? Probably not. But now you're asking a leading authority on, what's going on. It gets rough. Napa Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in Napa Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, the Autotech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. Autotech's EV-Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with Napa Autotech training. They're also asking about diagnostic processes. So the people I'm working with, especially the younger ones, and just really anybody, they're asking kind of like diagnostic process. And that's what's going to lead into really talking about Jorge Menchu. Lucky for me, I've been able to have extended phone call conversations with him, been able to hang out with him for long periods of time and talk about just you name it. I think this is before he started putting it in a class. I've seen it in his class, and then unfortunately I've seen it in others' classes that I'm not sure they've really gotten permission to use. So it'd be nice if we could protect each other's intellectual property a little bit. At least ask about it if you're going to use it, and for crying out loud, give credit where credit's due. But we're just kind of talking about the process. And I don't think so much like strategy-based diagnostics. I think we're going deeper. And I'm not talking so much like freaking which synapses are firing in your brain and what part of the brain are you using. I'm talking about the process of finding and eliminating possibilities. George, who we really need to take a minute here to talk about, the owner of AES Wave and a longtime tool developer and distributor. They've made such things as the U-Test terminal kits, the U-Activate. Now there's a second version, but U-Activate relay, and really a circuit tester that takes the place of a relay. Way back when I very first met him, he had software that allowed us to upload waveforms off of our lab scopes and database them. I mean, he had an interface for the Fluke 97, 98, 99, 105, upload Vantage at the time, Snap-on Vantage, the original, the heritage, if you will. And then, of course, many that followed up, including the Tektronix handheld lab scope. So it was the only game in town. It allowed us to store waveforms and notate them and catalog them, if you will, database them so they're searchable. Powerful addition. Now, most of our stuff's PC based, so it's easy to save, right? Cake or tablet, Android, if you will. Years ago, that was not the case. You could store a few on the device, maybe 5, maybe 10 waveforms, if you're lucky, some more than others. Or you could save them on cards, maybe like CF cards. I'm trying to think if any of them had like PCM, CIA cards, but off the cuff, I can't think of one. We had no way of storing them on a PC. So you'd end up like printing them, putting them in folders. It was something else. You do what you got to do. That was all George. So we're talking about this process. And also, if you get a chance, really, if you know he's going to be somewhere presenting, for crying out loud, take his classes. He's got a terrific wiring schematic class. He's got kind of the diagnostic process, which I think we'll talk a little bit about. Just so many. And if you can't get to one of his classes, but you know he's going to be presenting, hopefully he'll be at the trade show. And you can just, if you can get a couple of minutes of his time just to listen to him, interact with him, it will only make your life better. I mean, I'm not sugarcoating it. This is as serious as I get. Do yourself a favor. We're talking about this process then. Working through just, I don't know, maybe the nuts and bolts of it. He brings up something that once I say it, and many of you probably already know what I'm going to say, but if you don't, once I say it, you're probably going to have a major aha moment. So brace yourself. Crossword puzzles. Go about diagnosing or analyzing, if we will, if we want to use correct terminology. We go about our diagnostic analysis much like a crossword. Sometimes we know all the answers right off the bat. Just boom, 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 boom. Finish the puzzle. Successfully diagnose the vehicle. Tell the client or, service advisor, maybe technically, what will be required to make the repair. And away we go. But then we get the Friday edition of the New York Times crossword puzzle, right? Usually tough. So what do you do? And assuming you're not whipping out your phone or sitting at a PC, what do you do when you're working through a crossword puzzle where a lot of the solutions you don't know? You start with the ones you can get. They might be the 3-letter ones. Rarely is there a 2-letter one, but if there is, 2-letter, 3-letter, some 4 letters, you start getting all the gimmies if you can. Even if they're not 3 or 4-letter gimmies, maybe doesn't matter how many characters they are, but you get the gimmies, right? Maybe you got some experience with New York Times type of crosswords, so there's a few gimmies that they use in many puzzles, kind of just a regular solution. But like one that comes to mind is usually like oboe, OBOE, a woodwind instrument, something like that, seemingly on every freaking puzzle. Why? Probably because it has a lot of vowels, but still. You start getting the gimmies. You get the gimmies out of the way. You get the easy stuff out of the way. And on a car, is it the easy stuff to check? Because it's easy to look at. You can look at it on a scan tool. The component or the connector or the wiring where you need to get is very accessible. Visual inspection, right? Getting your flashlight out, a mirror, a borescope, whatever. Getting all the easy stuff, the easy information. Depending on what we're talking about, thermal imagers, whatever tools allow us to gather a lot of data, or maybe not even a lot of data, but pertinent data, very easy. Those are the gimmies. Okay, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Start filling in the blanks. Well, okay, I got a bunch of these 2, 3, 4-letter ones, and they're putting some dents into these 6, 7, 8-letter ones. Ooh, I got one. So that's another test result. And you can see how this is working. And then the questions that you can't answer yet, presumably the really long ones, the solutions you're not familiar with, you just don't know. You start filling in these blanks. You start filling in a little bit at a time. and you work on getting closer and closer to solving this puzzle, solving this car. And you're not turning the page and looking at stuff you don't need to be looking at, meaning, drivability problem. You're not checking, usually. Somebody's going to email me with the situation where this actually fixed the car, but you're not checking the brakes unless it's lacking power and the brakes are hung up. Fine, you got me. But that might be it later in the game, right? That's one of the last solutions as you've put this all together. You're not wasting time on things that are just not going to be it. Is the washer fluid level full? Something absurd, right? You're not wasting time with that. You're staying focused, working through this puzzle. What do I need to get this answer? What do I need to get this answer? This 5 across is killing me, and I've got 2 letters on it, and it's 8 letters. What are the ones going down? What can I do to get a couple more letters? It's the same thing. It's the same strategy. And once George said crossword puzzle, think about how you solve a crossword puzzle. My jaw must have bounced off the table. It had to have. Just, oh my God, it's perfect. That's exactly right. And I don't think this has to be advice for just someone getting into this. A lot of times for us that think we know what we're doing and we're getting our butts kicked, sometimes we got to start over, reprint it, and go through the process more cleanly, more logically, if you will. Get these answers that we can get, review, especially if we're not comparing it to the answer key in the back, right? We really don't have that. You might want to call Identifix or IATN, Diag.net, any of these databases, Google, I guess, forums, like, oh, these are common problems. You might want to think those are the gimme solutions, but sometimes they're not. They might be what helps you get a solution, but as I've said many times, there's caveats with that. That's a double-edged sword. You can start finding yourself reliant on it. It's like you start losing confidence. It's kind of like when you start looking at the answer key. Start relying on it. Now instead of really working to find this 5 across with 8 letters and you only have 2 of them and no idea what it is, it's really tempting to just go look at that answer key. And I can hear the flat raters right now, and I understand. I don't want to begrudge you, but it's a double-edged sword. So it's kind of like, be careful. Be careful with the databases. It's not limited to just drivability. It could be anything that we have to solve. And it doesn't always have to be the biggest crossword with so many solutions in it and questions, if you will. It could be smaller ones. We still have a process to go through to work our way to the answer. I just feel like answering some of your questions, first things, that pop up. If it doesn't start, what are the quickest things I can do? What are the gimmies? Let me plug a scan tool in. Let me get some DTCs. Let me look at some data. Is it going to point me in this direction or that direction? Solve some of those questions and work your way to the bigger ones, the more difficult ones to answer, ultimately solve the puzzle. So I hope, one, if you've never heard of Jorge Menchu, you now have, and seek him out. If you do know him or know of him, but you've never gotten a chance to really, just a minute or 2 of his time, I really hope you do make an effort to do that if he's available. Shake his hand, and he has brought so much to this profession. I know we toss words around a lot. I know a lot of the memorial type episodes I have used the word legend, but he is every sense of that word, a living legend amongst us. We really do owe a lot to him. He is so often in not really automotive situations, but amongst larger entities as we're interacting for expos and events and conferences and whatever, when there's hiccups along the road, a lot of times he's reached out to as that level head and voice of reason. And yeah, he's just an amazing human being. I hope you get a chance to meet him or consume some of his materials. Check out AES Wave website. See if you can't see him in person, you can't go to a training class and see his wiring diagram class. I think he has that on video that you can buy. I would heavily recommend it. Also, just kind of think about that next car you get in, even if it's not really one you're worried about kicking your tail. Just think about that process. And I'm not talking about like strategy-based diagnostics. I'm not talking about so much funnels and all that. I'm talking about working your way through the problem and going after the low-hanging fruit, if you will. The little questions, the little quick answers, if you will, that help fill in the spaces on the bigger, more difficult questions, and hopefully give you more information to go about better testing and understanding the results. So with that, I leave you. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for all the emails and questions. One of these evenings, there'll be a live Q&A. I think Bren Klein has decided to join. So yeah, I'm going to be in his shadow again. It's a good place to be. Happy to have him. Looking forward to that. So as we gear up for that, and also just for regular episodes, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, mattfanslowpodcast@gmail.com, and ask anything. No territory I won't go. I also want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Napa Autotech Training, again for making this all possible. And thank you to the Aftermarket Radio Network. Until next time, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fanslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fanslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.